if they latch on to some intellectual's attack upon the Christian faith, then they'll go and grab that crutch to lean on that as being the actual reason why they're walking away from it. Sooner or later, you have to explain it from here. And so even though the struggle may be here, we like to park it out there, then it's more sophisticated.
You know, I find that Ravi is captivating because, well, he's not only intelligent, intellectual, academic, and expressive, but he feels. He not only feels what God feels, but what you feel. And there's a connection there because the real God that he's talking about loves you so much that if he had 99 safe, he's out looking for the one. This is the power of love that's in Ravi. It lifts us above the academic bondage and the sectarian bondage and the partisan bondage. You know, when you were talking a moment ago about prayers not been answered, I just had an ache come up in my heart. I mean, really, Ravi, because I've seen such miraculous answers. But I've heard and sensed the heart of people who say, I've been asking and asking and asking. Mm-hmm. How do you answer that question?
Well, it's a long, tough question. I break down the main aspects of the Lord's Prayer in my book. But let me just put it in a simple way. C.S. Lewis, in his book Letters to Malcolm, chiefly on prayer, and it's a powerful book. If you haven't read it, I urge you to get it. It's one of his finest. And at one point, he's wrestling with this idea of what prayer actually is about. And he says this, he's told it's autosuggestion and all of this, lifting yourself up by your own psychological bootstraps. But he writes this little poem. He says, they tell me, Lord, that when I pray, only one voice is heard, that I am dreaming, you are not there, this whole thing is absurd. Maybe they're right, Lord, maybe they're right, that only one voice is heard. But if it is only one voice, it's not mine, it's yours. I'm not dreaming, you are the dreamer, and I am your dream.
Wow.
If we don't realize that prayer is the process by which God shapes you into becoming the dream of God, the irony of prayer, to me, is that at the very moment when Jesus cried out his greatest cry of being alone, my God, why have you abandoned me? That at that very moment he was actually in the center of his Father's will for the very purpose for which he had come. So God doesn't only conquer in spite of the dark mystery of pain, sometimes he conquers through it. And I think that is something we need to understand, that he harnesses and leads captivity captive, takes that process through which he delivers you. So there's a good side to it, there's a struggle side to it, but every great saint has come through the long night's journey of prayer and struggle and battle.
And I think that for you, if it didn't just hit like an arrow, that you really are God's dream. When I look back at the fatherlessness and the loneliness and poverty, and I've felt the pain. But this incredible God you were just talking about, he let me know I was his dream. Mm-hmm. And the boy that never heard a father say, that's good. Mm-hmm. God's cheered me on all the time, right? Mm-hmm. That's my kid. Mm-hmm. That's the overlooked kid, the kid that couldn't do anything, part of God's dream. And everybody out here watching us on television, all over the world, they're God's dream too. And when he becomes the power and personal presence filling their life, that personal relationship we're talking about, they can begin to live in God's dream. I find that when I lose, Jesus said, if you lose your life in my purpose, you'll find it. I find the people who lose their life pursuing the interests of God, what's he interested in? They find God suddenly seems to be more involved in their interests. Does that make sense?
I want to say an answer to that, and before I want to do that, I want to say something. God's really using James around in many, many ways. I wish I could tell you the conversations we've had with other leaders. He's sort of that catalyst that pulls us together. So God's using you, James, both in the dream He's made in you and the dreams He's fulfilling through you. I met a Pakistani medical doctor who was a convert to Christ from Islam. And I asked him once how he came to know Christ. He said he walked into a meeting and he says, I cannot tell you a thing of what I heard that day. I came to do a friend a favor and I was quite hostile. He said, but the closing 2 lines of that talk changed my life. He said this, the preacher said this, in surrendering you win, in dying you live. In surrendering you win, in dying you live. You put that into the context of what Christ calls you and me to surrender our will to Him, dying to ourselves, and then finding what life is really all about. It's a fascinating journey to walk with Christ. As you know, I came to know Christ on a bed of suicide myself when I was 17 years old. To me, with all of the argumentation that you can give, all of the reasoning and logic and all this stuff that actually after some time becomes quite boring, but you do it. All of that comes and goes. What doesn't leave you is the reality of that encounter. You know, Nick Charles, the very prominent CNN sportscaster, he's dying of cancer in Santa Fe. Nick is a dear friend. I saw him come to know the Lord some years ago and officiated at his wedding. My wife and I went to visit Nick and Corey in Santa Fe. She's still a CNN producer. There have been tens of thousands writing on the blog to CNN after his story came, an interview with Sanjay Gupta. Nick told me when I was there recently, as I prayed with him and I said my earthly goodbye to him, Nick said, one night I said to Christ, if you're ready, I am. I cannot take this pain anymore. It's been 20 months of this horrible stuff. If you're ready, I am tonight. He said, Ravi, where you are sitting right now, in these beautiful surroundings of Santa Fe, New Mexico, he said, I saw Jesus sitting at the foot of that bed. He said, as surely as I'm here. And he came and sat next to me and held my hand and he said, Nick, tonight's not the night for you. But if and when it comes, I'll be there for you to take you. He said, that moment of encounter with Jesus Christ, he says, I don't care if the world laughs. I don't care what they say. I had that encounter with him, and when he's ready for me, I'm ready to go. I expect to call any day now. He's slipping pretty fast. But this Christ really comes
Yes, He does.
in that personal encounter with every individual who cries out to Him.
And He does for you. Oh, right where you are, just Jesus. It's like a child. I don't care how much education you have or lack. We all come like children. Jesus, come into my life. I want to lose my life in you. Fill me with life. Forgive me. I receive you like a child. Just tell Him, Father, be my Father. Be my God. Jesus, come into my heart. You want someone to pray with you, the telephone number there. I prepare a little simple Bible study, knowing God as Father, be glad to send it to you. Would you say thanks to Ravi Zacharias for me?